Welcome to the Spiritual Underground Podcast. Once again, this is Dan, coming to you from the studios of DTM Enterprises. Stepping in just to give you a little piece of information that has come to light since the recording of Branden's story, which you'll hear in just a minute, part 2 of Branden's story. One thing has happened is a book called 12-Step Spiritual Recovery has been published and is available on Amazon. It is written by James Christopher Cohn, a very close friend of mine, and that is now available. A couple of different things. That book is an updated version of the 12 steps, an optimized version for folks who may have some 12-step in their lives. This can, I would say, can take your recovery to another level. And for folks that can't seem to get a hold of the 12-step concepts because of blockage, maybe they're not an alcoholic, they're not an addict, this book is designed to make that available to all people. I've been saying around 12-step rooms for quite some time now that we wish that everybody could have this program in their life. And this book is making that possible. You can also go to spiritualunderground.org to get show notes for the podcast and to contact me. If you want to contact me about this particular next thing, we have some new intro music that is produced, written and produced by a friend of ours here in Louisville, Kentucky. His name is Darren Frank. Jesse Simpson is also involved in the production of that, and maybe even playing some of the music. So I will check that out and give you more details. But if you're interested in that, you can shoot me an email, or if there's anything at all, if you want to be on these podcasts, if you want to be having feedback, if you want to know where you can get a hold of some of that music, if you want to know more about this book and this TSSR, this 12-Step Spiritual Recovery Program that is launching soon, all that, you can send me an email at dan@spiritualunderground.org. You can also find a link to that at spiritualunderground.org. So I've burned up enough of your time. Without further ado, we will get on with the recording and the podcast. Branden's The Original Juiceman, Part 2. Welcome, y'all. Welcome to the Spiritual Underground Podcast. We're taking off again tonight here from actually today we're in the kitchen at DTM Enterprises. A little bit late at night. I've been at, this is Dan, and I've been at yoga teacher training this afternoon after work, and the Juiceman, the original Juiceman, Branden, has stopped by this evening, and we're going to do part 2 of his story. We went from his back in his days of the madness and that whatnot, and up to the years or the things that led up to him getting sober. Mm-hmm. And then we also, the little slip up, there's in our community, it's actually got I guess you could say it's a little bit legendary in the fact that there's people were the day that he stood up in that retreat and said that he needed to come clean with something. Those kind of like brutal, spontaneous, honest events like that touch people, and people remember it, because I've heard that story a couple of times from people who were in attendance at that night, right, and recall that happening. And then also the fact that you gave up, in a sense, you gave up some recovery time that night. Yes. When that happens, and that's hard for us that's hard for the ego to do, to go, okay, man, I'm going to erase X many months of sobriety. Oh, yes. And back that up. And that takes but that's what this, that's exactly the kind of stuff of what this program does to you, is it's making you think different than what you would have done, right? Mm-hmm. And you get a chance to do that stuff. And then here, here back then, what did you say, it was almost 3 months or something? Someplace around 3 months that you gave up?
Yeah.
So now here you just celebrated on February the 1st, just a couple of days ago. This is February the 7th right now, so it'll be a week ago tomorrow. You celebrated 16 years of sobriety, so that little 3 month stint is a drop in the bucket, today. Compared to today, who'd have thunk that, you'd be you'd be all the way down the line here now today. So, and the last time we got up to someplace around your 1 year token. And so I don't know if we want to talk some more about that first year of recovery. Sometimes you can almost like tell a whole doggone story on the first year, because that first year is a bumpy road and has a lot of things in it and a lot of twists and turns. And so just thank you for coming in the studio always and sitting down and sharing this story. We want to get part 2 in quickly after part 1 was released. So. Exactly. Where do you want to start, you think? Or you can just say whatever you want to say.
I'll just piggyback off of kind of where you started this, because I think it's where we left off initially in part 1, and it's a good lead in to get started. So yeah, I mean, talking about changing that sobriety date, at that first year mark, or right at the cusp of my original first year mark, that it's not lost on me that doing, coming clean that day is largely, responsible for the fact that I have been able to stay sober for 16 years. I think that was vital, really early on. I think it helped set the tone. It helped set, a standard for what I learned some things. I learned that how vital that was, because it helped set the standard for how I needed to proceed. Because that first year, like you said, I mean, it's beyond a bumpy road. I mean, it's a up and down roller coaster like crazy. It's because so much of you're rearranging so much, internally. Right. I mean, you're completely
rewiring your system.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not like just a short-sighted or it's not just about like drinking. It's not like just about alcohol. I mean, that's what I thought. I think that's what probably everybody thinks when they come in. They're going to help me with my drinking, and I'll be able to go back to my old life, right? Yeah. Which is normal. That's a very normal and common mindset to have, because you don't know what you don't know, and that's kind of a saying that we use a lot too, because it's way bigger than that, but you don't know that coming in, and it takes going through the process to really figure that out and figure out the gravity of what you're about to do, and it's all happening kind of in the moment, and then once you finally kind of realize, holy crap, this thing is way bigger than what I thought, and this touches so much more. Then you're kind of touched, and at least that's what happened for me. Figuring out that this thing is not just as simple as, they're going to help me with my drinking, and then I'll be able to go back to the old life and the old things I used to do and the old friends and all that. I mean, everything freaking changes. I mean, everything. To the point to where you look back and just didn't have to take 16 years. I mean, just a short, 1 year or 2 years, you can look back and go, I am 180 degrees different, I don't look anything or resemble anything like I used to be just a short time ago. And
we even look different.
Oh, yeah.
You see guys come in and you watch them physically change.
Yep.
And especially in that first year, in the first months of coming out of that, and then within that first year, guys change. You don't recognize them.
Exactly. Yeah, because they walk taller, they walk different. They, sometimes a lot of people lose weight because they end up getting into working out and things like that. Sometimes there is a weight gain for some. But a lot of times they end up changing. So so there's a physical change, and then
the lights come on in their eyes. You can see a sparkle all of a sudden where there's a dead eyes.
Oh yeah. Their spirit is like, it's almost like they're glowing from the inside. When somebody's really gotten bit by this thing and really is taking a hold to it, it's that's what we call part. That's a juicy thing. For real. That's kind of what we're all here for, is to try to help the lights come on for somebody else. And it's fun to witness and fun to be a part of, and to know that you might have a hand in it somehow, either with the conversation or with the friendship that you offer, or, the camaraderie that takes place. I mean, it's a hell of a journey,
One of the things I always remember was people was telling me how much I was changing, but I didn't really feel it at the time, right?
Yeah.
And you don't really know it. I don't really believe the guys that are telling me either. But now, until I was like on the other side of it and watching guys change, then did I believe that those guys were telling me the truth when I was changing. That you see. I mean, that's part of the joy of coming in and staying around, is watching those other guys. I love watching these guys wake up.
It's a lot like, I liken the experience to almost like almost everybody. I don't care if you're listening out there, everybody's tried to lose weight at some point. I don't care if you're already thin or been thin your whole life. At some point, you try to shed some pounds.
Yeah.
You put all that work in, you're changing your diet, you're going to the gym, you're doing running, you're doing whatever you're doing, and you don't see the change, but other people see it way before you do. And it's kind of the same thing, with this deal. Usually, people around you who are watching and paying attention notice the change in you before you do, but it takes them sharing about it and, telling you those things for you just kind of start to even realize or even start to pique your own interest, like, man, am I really changing? Because sometimes as you go through it, you don't feel like you are. You just feel like you're kind of following the bouncing ball, and you don't really know that if it's meaning anything yet. But other people are saying it is, and you're like, it didn't feel like that inside to me. And
I still held on to a lot of my.
You
problems.
Guys just blowing smoke up my, and that's what you think, and then soon enough, like once. You start thinking there's a conspiracy, like, well, that guy said it, and next week this guy said it.
These dudes are
your family says
man.
it, who doesn't know anything about these guys. Like, okay, so they're not talking. They're not really talking. It's not. There's not a conspiracy. Like they're not just puffing me up. Like they might really be. You start believing it.
Yeah,
and you start
happening.
noticing it too, and that's part of the awakening. That's part of the journey of you awakening yourself and start buying in even deeper that this thing could possibly be working and possibly continue to help you. So yeah, it's a hell of a ride that first year, because coming in, I think we all have a mindset that we walk in here with, that I'm just going to do this and it's going to mean X, and we have like a pre-designed or predetermined, idea of how it's going to go, and then usually, if it's done right, none of that ever comes out. It's just, we say it all the time that, if I had written down what I expected for myself in early recovery, I would have shortchanged myself big time.
Yep.
And that's just the truth. And, the only way you're going to know it is if you get a sponsor, go through the steps and find out for yourself, because that's part of it, that's part of it. You kind of awaken throughout the process, and that's a cool thing. You don't want to miss it. But and the steps are designed that way. The steps are really designed to, to get you to look at things at a level mainly, could be for the first time. I didn't come in with any kind of religious background whatsoever, like zero, which I realize now, and I realized even, during that first year or two, what a blessing that kind of was, because a lot of people that come in, usually had some concept of a higher power, or
hadn't to let go of the old ideas. If you really didn't have any baggage. Real tight old ideas, then it does that. It relieves you of something to have to let go of.
Yeah, and a lot of people have some type of baggage on, again, when it comes to the God topic, and it prevents them, from completely letting go and being open-minded, like our program kind of urges, and to adopt a new, concept that's personal to you. And so when somebody comes in like with that kind of, mindset, I don't know, to me, I guess all I'm trying to say is that I felt blessed that I didn't have to let go of a lot of stuff.
It wasn't so much reprogramming.
Right.
We had to undo some old thinking to get some new in. You just had like an open vacuum to allow some new thinking to come
Basically, there was a period there, it lasted probably a few months, where I was questioning, how to proceed, because like I said, I had a lack of experience with all these things. I always felt inferior when it came to religious talk or the God topic, because just didn't have any training, didn't have any knowledge, didn't read any books on it and all that stuff. So that was, and of course I'm talking about this because it's the whole higher power deal and the spiritual aspect of this deal is kind of, it's threaded through all the steps. I think even Bill talks about it in our book that if you miss the spiritual part of the program, then you missed kind of the whole deal. You kind of miss the whole point, because that's what we're all shooting for, right? Is to try to grab onto a power that's greater than alcohol, because alcohol is a power greater than ourselves, and we're trying to grab onto another power to try to help solve our problem, which is our drinking habits and our thinking, and how we behave and all that. And so I felt pretty blessed coming in that I didn't have to do a lot of rearranging. I just had to simply kind of get on board with just making the choice to move forward, But once I did, it was pretty much, like that first year. I mean, like for me, like, since I didn't have a whole lot of, I didn't have like an image, in my mind about what a higher power was or what God was to me. I didn't know if I quite, it's always been kind of a mystery to me. It still is, like my idea of the whole thing really hasn't changed much. Like, I think I heard early on, like, the concept of, if I can explain it, then there's probably not much of a higher power anyway. Yeah. And for some reason, that always stuck with me, and I like that, and I ran with that.
Yeah, me too.
Like, I'm not going to try to figure this out. Right. I'm just going to, and I heard another concept once about, I think I'd rather live my life like there was a God than
be wrong.
Living, and then get to the end and find out I was wrong, than living my whole life, like there wasn't, and get to the end and find out I was wrong there too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that kind of stuck with me too. And so for the large part for me, like, going through the steps that first year with my sponsor, I kind of, in the beginning, I guess, was acting as if,
Sure.
to steal an old phrase, but
going on his faith. I know some of that was mine, and that he had faith this would work for me. So, I was like, well, okay,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
A lot of what he told me, I was like shaking inside my head. I was going, no. But that sounds like a bunch of bullshit to me. But I still had some faith that kept on making me walk and do the things that he was saying to do, because I saw these other guys that had something that I didn't have.
Good point. And for me, honestly, so early on, and so since I didn't really have a concept, that I could just tap into, or to even piggyback off of from childhood, I didn't really think about it much. What I did focus on was that the groups that I was going to at the time, there was a particular couple of, I had a circuit of meetings that I was going to, but the one that really stuck out to me the most was a men's group that I went to, the Trinity Men's Group, or the Suburban Men's Group, I think is what it's aptly called. And it's just an all men's meeting. And of course I was going to some of the other younger, hip crowd kind of meetings, the co-ed groups. But that men's meeting, always, had, a higher value to me. And, so going to that meeting a lot, that's just kind of where, I focus a lot of my energy.
It's okay, man. We can talk about it.
Yeah, I lost where I was going to go with it.
We're allowed to lose track of where we were going with it, and circle back around and jump around. That's what I want this thing to be, real talk. Mm-hmm. We could write a big script or something and do that, but that ain't what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming for the real deal. I thought it was just plain insanity to go to an all men's AA meeting for a long time.
Yeah.
I thought, what is the use in that? But I found that, when I first walked into Spiritual Underground, that particular vibe that allowed the guys to talk like guys talk.
Right.
Without any distractions in the room, and not that that's a distraction or whatever, but guys do need to do that. And I think there's a thing where I think actually, and I don't know it from personal experience, obviously, but I have the same belief that women should have some kind of women's group too. There's just a thing that dynamic of it being in that same sex thing takes some boundaries out of play that I don't maybe want to talk about in a meeting. Yeah. With females present.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it because I'm embarrassed. B, I don't want to talk about it because it makes me look like less than, I don't want to look like a goofball. I got an image to uphold,
Yeah.
And with our group, I can just say whatever I want, right?
Right.
And then, all the walls came down.
Yeah. I landed on why I brought that group up because it relates.
I thought if I ran my lips for a minute, you would come back around.
That's how it works. Yeah, thank you. So the group itself, so that group of men that I would see every Tuesday night, that particular group became, kind of like my higher power in a way. I mean, that was a power greater than me, by far. I mean, I was sitting in the, this room with like freaking legends, really. I mean, in this deal, like serious dudes who are on the front lines every day doing, everything that you can possibly do in this program, and doing it well and doing it with a smile on their face and with, a happy disposition the whole time, and, freely giving of themselves. And, they're just huge. I mean, they were, extremely bright lights, and I grabbed onto that. I mean, that was super attractive. And, so early on, I just kind of sidestepped the whole thinking, deep dive into thinking about, my brand of spirituality or, the whole God thing. I just like, okay, I'm just going to act as if right now, I'm just continue on. And, and that was another directive, I think, throughout that group that was talked about is, you'll know when you've taken a third step when you've started writing your fourth step, just to continue, move forward, and so that was kind of what I did. It was like, this is a group of dudes that has got way more, it's got what I want. They have way more going on in their life than what I've got going on. And, I want to find out more, and so that kept me going for the longest time. And then of course, as I went through the process, I ended up developing my own personal relationship, with a higher power, which I choose to call God, just because it's an easy label, and I don't like I said, I don't think about it too much. And so, that's kind of where I kind of made my start, I guess. It kind of started from that place, and move forward. But that inventory, that fourth step is to me, it was the most eye-opening experience that I think that I've ever really encountered in my, because I'm trying to take myself back. I'm 41 now and 16 years sober. I'm trying to take myself back to that first year as a scared shitless 25-year-old kid. I say kid because I'm technically not, but that's what I really emotionally, maturity-wise, and behaviorally-wise, that's kind of really what I was. And so taking myself back to that place, talking now about it.
Did you happen to keep that work?
Huh?
Did you happen to keep that
work?
Of
course, yeah. I've got my original fourth step.
Did you? Very cool. Yeah, because that's,
notebook.
some lineages tell you like burn that and just do away with it.
Yeah, I never bought into that.
And I was always encouraged. That was an option that was given to me.
Right.
But I was also encouraged. And one of the things about my original 4-step notebook, I was ambitious enough that I was taking notes of what my sponsor was telling me in that notebook.
I did the same thing about how to sponsor somebody.
Right, yeah. So like what to do, So I have some very valuable notes that are in there, and even though I could like copy them out and have them elsewhere now if I wanted to, right? There's some value and some
it's so funny. I
sentimental value in having it in that original book the way that I was taking through the steps the first time when the miracle happened for me.
Yeah. I'm the same way. Like I could go to my file cabinet in my office right now and pull it out, and everything that I've ever learned about sponsoring somebody is in that notebook.
Yeah.
It's not on a computer anywhere. It's not in a file. It's not in any. It was never transferred to anything else. It's in that damn notebook.
Yeah.
Because like I said,
I'm a fan of that. Because that meant a lot
it's sentimental.
That was my. That was
my original journey.
Yeah.
And that to me that means something. Because that essentially is my launch pad for where I am. The entire foundation that I have, that I've built, everything that consists of my life today, kind of came from that experience, and from that simple little notepad, that simple book, where I poured my heart and soul into that damn thing, and trying to figure out the riddle of me. And,
right.
So for me, like that 4-step inventory, the way that's structured in the book, and the way that it's got the columns, and the way it asks you to to really focus, a very pointed look at certain aspects of your life, was really the first time that I'd ever done that. And so for me, it was a very enlightening experience. I remember, as I was getting sober, I had people who were getting sober around me in my class, if you will, like people who are at the same time frame that I'm on. Everybody's talking about how much of a, griping, they're griping about, how much of a chore it is, and oh my God, it's so grueling and all that. I mean, and there were times, I guess, that it was, I'm not going to say fun, that's not the right word. It wasn't comfortable, but I wasn't naive enough to think that I was going to go through this thing and be comfortable the whole time. I mean, that kind of the whole point of questions like that, and to go is to be uncomfortable.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
it's really the whole point of it all.
Yeah,
is,
right. That another one of those simple things is you don't grow in the comfort zone.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's I love that. It's beautiful. I mean, it's 100% truth. I mean, that's just the way that works. Try going to the gym and staying comfortable while you're working out, and see what your results are at 30 days. You're still going to be the same fatty that you started.
Yeah. I've heard somebody sell that.
You got to work,
analogy
man.
of the gym of going and sitting on the bench out in the lobby. You can go to the gym every day and sit on the bench, and you're not going to, man, nothing's going to happen. You won't see any change. Flip side of that is, if you walk in the gym and you start lifting heavy things, you're not going to be able to help to not change, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
You're going to build muscle, like it or not, and so the same thing with these steps. If you do it, you will experience the change, or some change anyway, according to how far you to take it to completion or not. I think it is vital though, and I tell people, like, one of the worst things in the world I think you can do is start that 4-step,
right,
and not finish it.
Oh, of course, by far,
because that's part of that third
worst.
step decision. And one of the warnings I
started.
give a guy when we're going to make a third step decision, my warning is, look, part of what you're deciding to do is you're going to go down this path with me, and I need you to make a little pact with me that you're going to do that. Because one of the worst things you can do is walk down this, pick a whole bunch of these scabs, and then not take the rest of the steps to get free from it.
Yep, exactly. That's futile. I mean, that's insane to even suggest. Luckily for me, I had a really good sponsor early on that that knew all the stuff that you just said and more. I mean, he educated me very well on how we're going to do this, and he walked me through the way his sponsor did it, and thank God I come from good lineage. That I attached myself to people who knew what the hell they were doing, and guided me well. So I'm grateful for that as well. But that was the first time that I really got to take a quick look, or a deep dive into looking at, my perspective, because I came in, largely feeling, because it's not a mystery that most of us alcoholics, have a huge ego, and a, misproportioned, perspective about ourselves and the role that we played or didn't play in certain situations. And I generally, I came in like most of us, and thought that the reason that I arrived at the spot in my life where I had that low point in my life where I was, it wasn't my fault. It was everybody else's fault. It was her fault. It was the court's fault. It was the officer's fault. It was my parents' fault. It was the lack of this
big string of bad luck.
It didn't matter.
And
that flat tire that one time that got me, just whatever excuse you could, like that was, that was definitely me, and a lot of us come in like that. But that 4-step, it kind of, in that fourth column, that's where you get, the script gets flipped on you, and you really get to see the part that you did play. And there's even in the times where, I thought for sure going into, there's no way that I had a part to play here. I mean, that person wronged me. I didn't do anything to them, and I still, at some point, some level, I had a part to play, and I was, because I came in, feeling like a victim, in a lot of these situations, which wasn't a good scenario for this, for an alcoholic brain, to live that life of a victim it's not healthy,
right.
because that can justify us continually drinking indefinitely.
Right.
It does for a lot of people, which is sad.
Helps keep the cycle going.
Yeah. And so realizing, pretty quickly, because I was in my 4-step, but then the first couple of months, I guess, with, working with my sponsor, all of a sudden I had this monumental, perspective change about everything that really has happened, and at least in the last 10 years. Because like I said, I drank alcoholically for a solid 10 years, from the age of 15 to 25. But even prior to that, all of the other experiences leading up to, my drinking and whatnot, that a lot of that stuff came out in that 4-step too. So that was a big turning point for me, realizing that I was dirty. I wasn't as victimized as I thought.
Right.
And, and that really set about a new, I kind of got, a fire in me at that point, because I didn't like feeling guilty, because I got to, prior to that 4-step experience, I largely, got to experience the whole decade feeling pretty, what's the right wording to use here? I didn't feel, guilty. I didn't feel that like I was the victim. You know what I mean? I didn't do anything wrong. It was all you guys, the world.
Self-righteous.
Self-righteous, and
so I know I had an air of self-importance,
all
where,
of that.
all of that, do you know who I am kind of thoughts, and,
right.
The world really ought to be treating me better.
Yeah, exactly. Like, all of that. And so dealing with that, that barrage, that feeling with that feeling of guilt, and it wasn't just like I was feeling, okay, that one incident, I feel good. It was like my entire 4-step was riddled with it. It was like, oh my God, I was wrong here. I was wrong here for that. I never looked at it from that perspective.
Yes, for shaking your very foundation.
With that for the first time, really, was, it was monumental for me, that's where, and since I didn't like that feeling so bad, I was like, I've got to hurry up and get through I need to get to that amends process, which was, steps 8 and 9, so I could go back and try to clean this up, because I did not like feeling like I owed somebody, or that I had got the record wrong,
That's exactly that point, that picking them scabs, and now I got them all bleeding.
I couldn't stand it. I was so uncomfortable,
you don't have a tool, a way to get free of that, then you're pretty well fucked if you will drink again if you don't continue down the path and take care of all that house cleaning.
Exactly, because part of one of the steps leading up to the 4-step was step 2, realize.
Coming to believe?
No, insanity. We're talking.
Yes, that's 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come to believe that a power greater than yourself can
restore you to sanity. Yes. See, I had trouble leading up to that point. I had trouble kind of believing that I was insane.
Right.
Because again, I was right. Everybody else was wrong. That 4-step, getting that 4-step though, it changed everything. It realized it since it completely threw me on my upside down. That was really the first time I got to realize that, oh crap, step 2 really does apply to me. It's not one, because I kind of glazed over that one, to be honest. But that one really kind of cemented for me the idea that, that my perspective was way out of whack. So in a level that I couldn't even comprehend. And so that's why I wanted to run to that 9th step and to try to get as clean and free as all that as I could. So for me, steps, and of course, obviously the 5th step was obviously very, very powerful, where you talk, you tell another human being and God the exact nature of your wrongs and all that. And of course, like everybody, I had things that were not on my list, not on my 4-step, that I thought I was taking to the grave, and, that I would never, ever, ever share with another soul as long as I lived. And of course, that's exactly what, my sponsor was hip. He knew he knew that I would probably pull that same thing like everybody. And so I go to sit down for his, the 5th step appointment with him, and he's like, okay, let's get started. And he's like, so how you want to do this? You want to, tell me about the stuff that you wrote down first, or do you want to talk about the stuff you didn't write down first? And of course, I thought, oh my God, this dude's like psychic or something.
Right.
How the hell do you know, right? I didn't realize it was that common. And so I took the easy road. I was like, I put a lot of time in this. Let's just start with stuff that I wrote down, and let's just take it from there. And so, I led in with all of that, and but at the end, I ended up spilling my guts, and so that was obviously, just a powerful day and I didn't even realize at the time how powerful that was for me. But it was really the first time that I'd ever told anybody everything. There were certain people in my life that knew a lot.
Right.
But there was never one person who knew it all.
Yeah, we're real good. That's another place, the area where we compartmentalize. We'll let this person in on that, this person in on that, but not any single person in on everything.
And I think I knew at the time, just based on my feelings, how it was a powerful deal at the time, but I didn't realize the value of it until a couple of weeks later. Because I remember doing that fifth step. And then I was going somewhere. I don't know. I was in a meeting or leaving a meeting. I was taking people back to the healing place or giving rides somewhere, and somebody had said something about, I haven't thought about a drink today, and then of course, people sometimes when people talk, I'm in my head, internalizing what they're saying. I'm turning it around on me. Like, when's the last time I thought about a drink?
Yeah, right.
And up until that time, until I did that fifth step, I was still thinking about drinking, still reminiscing the old days and still thinking about the life that I just left, a few short months ago, and the people in it. I wonder what so-and-so's doing, or drive past the place that the watering hole, to go to a meeting and really, and I used to pull in there every day for, 9 years, that kind of thing. And so I wasn't that far away from my old life to where it was still, nagging at me, and so I would reminisce and I would think about, drinking and almost to the point of obsession, where I still was obsessing about a lot of things, in those early days. And then it dawned on me, it had been about 2 weeks since I did that fifth step, and it dawned on me, it's like, oh my God, I haven't thought about drinking in the last several days. And then I'm driving, I'm still driving, taking these guys home. I was like, no, that's not even right. Like, it's been longer than several days. It's been at least a week. And then I figured out, no, it was actually closer to 2 weeks, and I'll be damned. I'm like, well, what happened 2 weeks ago, that could be like responsible for this? There has to be an explanation for this. And I was like, holy shit, I did my fifth step 2 weeks ago. And so the aha kind of moment came for me, 2 weeks later. And then, of course, I was already in a hurry to get to the 9, and now I was like a man on fire for real. Like, I was all over trying to hurry up and get through these steps. And, so anyway, got busy.
That's a cool thing. I think that's definitely a testament to a sponsor that, will guide you in a way that kept you, wanting to maintain the momentum,
mm-hmm.
right? There's an art in that for sure to keep a guy invested in it and don't let him, it's so easy to let a guy, fade out.
Yep. Yeah, and Bart had told me early on, he's like, if you stick with me and you do everything I say to do, and we meet once a week, and you follow all my instructions and you don't balk, and he said 4 to 6 months is about the average.
Yep.
And he was right. I think I actually did. We did have some scheduling issues in there at some point for a couple of weeks, throughout that process, but I think it was somewhere around 5 months. I think is what I ended up taking.
That's about right where I was at on that first time through.
Right, it was somewhere right there, So he was dead on the money. But anyway, I got up to that 9th step, part, and I enjoyed the hell out of, contact. I even contacted ex-girlfriends. every single one of them.
I'll do amends every single person I can.
Yeah, obviously family, and friends, and they were all extremely valuable, and of course I followed my sponsor's instructions and to a T, and just I had a ball with it, and of course I never had any of them go bad. I've heard other people that have shared differently, that they had a couple of them that didn't quite go their way they wanted, not necessarily sideways, but went a little different.
Yeah, I had some ricochets.
I like that, ricochets. But I can honestly say that 100% of all the amends that I've made they went well. They were well received.
One of my ricochets come back around after a couple of years too. In 4 years later or something. And I saw that person again in a meeting not too long ago. And the fact of the matter was that everything was okay.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So that was like
Initially it
proof in the
wasn't,
pudding.
but it came. It
I
settled.
wasn't certain, right?
Yeah.
It went bad enough, or it was again, it wasn't bad. It just ricocheted, and it went a little wonky, and I wasn't really sure where it landed. And it was per my sponsor's advice to just let that don't get in there and muddle in that. So you did your part. That's part of this thing, right? Is to do my part.
Right.
It doesn't matter what that other person, how they receive it, right?
Right.
And so I had to get out of the way of that. But here, whatever, I guess it'd be because I just crossed over 4 years. It was been someplace in the neighborhood like 3 years later or whatever, whatever that means, that I bumped into this particular person in the meeting and everything was okay. There's a little weird energy in there, but it wasn't because of the men.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it was a female.
Right. Well, that's cool that you had that. You had that experience. Yeah, I like that stuff. I mean, it's
you get them addicted to amends. I mean, amends are same thing that we say around here. You give me something that makes me feel good, and I want more of it, right? And those amends feel good.
No, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's because it's not only freeing for us as the alcoholic, obviously, but it's freeing for the other person too, and that's what I noticed very early on with some of the amends that I was making is because I wasn't just going to him and saying, hey man, I'm sorry,
right.
Like I was taught never to say that.
Yeah, we have a recipe for
There's
doing
a recipe,
powerful amend.
Right, yeah, that you and of course I was taught even I think at that early time, I'm trying to remember, I get a little crossover with Christopher versus Bart, but I'm pretty sure Bart was telling me the same thing about kind of laying it out, like your perceived idea of how you think you've wronged them, and then, using it as a conversation, like you're there to obviously, say some stuff, but then open it up to like, this is what I remember, do you, you want to correct the record? Do you have anything that you think I need to make an amends
for? Yeah.
But the coolest part about that was, not only do, we as the alcoholic get a chance to get free from that, but that other person as well gets a chance, to get free. Because I can't even tell you how many times, I'm the whole point of my meeting is to simply, account for the ways that I know that I have wronged them. And I'm not blaming them for anything. I'm not making any justifications. I'm not saying, I did this to you and I know that's wrong, and then, start in like, but I only did that because, I didn't, there's none of that. That's not an amends, but the cool thing is like when you approach somebody like that, I mean, 'cause that's an odd thing to do. Like the world just doesn't have that, it's not really something that happens on a regular basis, that where somebody completely comes to you and is only concerned about cleaning up their side of the street about something that happened back in the day that may have been big then. It's obviously not now, time's passed, but it's like, hang on, there's this person sitting across me and he's come all this way to try to, to tell me that he's fully own up to the mistakes that he's made and not saying anything about the other crap that he used to gripe at me for, it touches him, I can't tell you how many times sitting there and literally like I shut up and like, well, this is what I had to say, and stopping and then realizing, okay, so he's really not going to berate me about it. He's literally here to just clean up his side of the street.
He didn't say a thing about my stuff.
They feel compelled. I can't, they are just naturally compelled to say, almost puke out some of their own stuff. Like, well, man, you weren't completely at fault. Like, I did you kind of wrong too. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't always that good to you either. And, and that was I don't know. I just thought that was very touching and moving for me to witness that, not just once, but like countless times,
right.
A high percentage of times, and feeling very proud, honestly, that I was a part of something that, that I felt was vital for me, but also, uplifting for them as well, And so to me, I mean, that the 9th step always will and always does, hold a special place, for me. I have a certain love for those, for that step and for those interactions, because that's the stuff that really means stuff. That's the stuff that can change lives, relationships. It can change your whole outlook. I mean, it can refresh, your thoughts about humanity almost, because we don't walk around in a society today, even 15 years ago, but still today, where that's normal.
Right.
You know, it's always point the finger, pass the blame, and who do we throw? You know,
Covered up,
or act like it don't exist.
Right. Yeah.
You know, or just not interested at all.
Yeah.
You know.
You were talking about having that you know, it was the ninth step, just, you know, and it's cliche-ish. You know, that was when it happened to me, when I had that. You were saying it was after your fifth step that you had that little observation that you had not thought about a drink in a while.
Right.
And I remember plainly it just being a little giddy on the telephone. The sponsor talked to him, and, you know, and I said, and I mean, it was just like, and again, it's just like I threw a softball at him, man, and I was saying, he's like, how are you? And I was like, man, I have not felt this good in long, you know, I don't know. I'm just, everything's like great, man. And you know, it's just good and this and that and other thing. And he goes, so, are you not even halfway through? And I thought he was like talking about my spill, you know, what a jerk, man. I'm trying to share some juice here, man. And he's cutting me off, asking me if I'm halfway through with my, you know, and I thought he was talking about like my little spiel I had going on. And he, you know, he did that, you know, well, hey, newcomer, kind of, you know, hold on. No. You know, we're saying that 9-step stuff, right? And then, you know, then the bells start going off and you're like, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
Let's say that.
Yeah.
We're going to be amazed before we are halfway through.
Yeah, and that's yeah, and I experienced that too, you know, and yeah, wholeheartedly, you know. I mean, I was amazed at step 5, you know, because I got to enjoy the obsession to drink to be lifted from me, you know, and I've heard other people share that has not happened for them, and of course, I always question. You
never know exactly where it's going to happen. Like I said,
right. It's somewhere in the process. Like I've always believed that if you follow direction, if you follow the process, and you come to it open-minded, and you're as honest as you can be at that time. You don't have to be perfect, but as honest as you know that you can be. It will work if you complete it. You know, but it's completing it is a big part of that whole deal. If you don't complete it, it may not happen for you. You know, there's so many times like I've talked to. I don't know. I've tried to sponsor, tons of people since, and over the 16 years. And there's a bunch of them that didn't fully make it, and then I see them years later and, be sitting in the meeting and they come in, they share, and they usually talk about they start talking in the way of saying, like they're baffled somehow. Like, oh, well, I've tried the steps and it's not really working for me. Like, dude, I've tried to sponsor you. You stopped at, 5,
right.
We never even got to, we never got through 4, or we got through 5, but you never would attack any of your men's. It's like you didn't complete nothing. So you have not, completed the 12 step. You have not tried AA. You think really, you have, but you haven't.
I feel a certain obligation to call somebody on that stuff.
I do too.
Look, you can't come in here talking that you've done this work and it didn't work because you didn't do it.
Exactly. You did parts of it.
Yeah, and that was says
that's not what we talk about.
We joke around about those words that are in that book, like it half measures, and are you willing to go to any length?
Exactly.
All these things really mean that. Exactly. It's not just bullshit words. Thoroughly, completely, absolutely, all that stuff is not just little cliches we're tossing around. It's what we mean.
Mm-hmm.
It's what Bill meant. It's what the steps mean.
Exactly. So those 2 steps are my fave. The 4, 5, and 9. I like the action steps. Of course, I'm a doer. I like to see tangible results. I like to do things and see the result. So but those particular steps have a deeper meaning for me because that's where I really got connected to this deal, and that's so, kind of leading in all this, we talked about, like how much of a roller coaster ride it is or whatever, but that's part of it. My entire, thought process and internals just got rearranged, and it was a cool thing because that's what needed to happen. I didn't know that's what needed to happen. I just know that, I kept getting arrested and I kept, drinking kept getting in the way of everything. But I didn't want to give it up, It's like, help me with my drinking. Help me drink successfully because I've been trying for a long time. And no matter what concoction I would come up with, it would never work, But I didn't know all this other stuff was at play, But that was kind of like, but that first year, it's monumental. It's, it was my launch pad, and it kind of helped set the tone. And so from that point on, 10, 11, and 12, the whole maintenance deal, continually, seeking God and, and praying and meditating and trying to help others. That was kind of the, the goal for, walking forward. And so I got to enjoy, a lot of, my early sobriety, I'll say after the 5 years, mark, living that life. I was single. When I came in. I wasn't attached to anybody, didn't have any relationship, wasn't married, didn't have any kids. So I was single when I came in.
Which allows you to pour a lot of energy into being recovered.
Oh, yeah. So I felt blessed there too, really. I felt like, because, a lot of the thoughts that I had during that first year or two was, was like, I get to reinvent myself. And that's kind of how I looked at it, and I still do to this day. Like, I feel pretty blessed that I, have gotten to live the life of Branden Morris, as 3 different people. I got to experience, being me up until the age of 15, prior to not really ever, not drinking at all. I got to know that piece of me. I got to experience life as that guy. And then I got to experience life as the drunk guy for 10 years. And, now I've gotten to experience being me, the sober guy. Right. You know what I mean? Yep. And all 3 guys, the same dude, physically, you know what I'm saying? Like
same vehicle.
The same vehicle. There you go. I was trying to think of a good, label for that. Same vehicle, but clearly 3 different people.
Yeah.
Like 100% different people living in that shell of a person, living in that vehicle. So how many people can say that? And so to me, I don't look at my disease, my alcoholism, as a detriment. I don't look at it as a, something that I don't wear it like a weighted suit. I mean, I just don't like I don't know. It's like,
it's actually, to me, I mean, I know that today it's a blessing, right? I would
totally
not get to have the life that I have today without having gone through that. I would have never, if I, the pain was not, let's just say, I'll walk along this, because as we see that, and that's one of the things that we always talk about, the 12 steps being valuable to other people, and not just alcoholics.
Mm-hmm.
I see people that are just like, I don't know, running on some low grade misery. They're not right. They're not alcoholics really. They don't see that. They're not drinking themselves into oblivion. They're not doing that, but they are walking around with that same kind of, like I said, low grade misery. That it's like there's more to life, brother. And I don't know that I those people getting them to do this, they're not in enough. It ain't bad enough to take any actions to make it any better.
Right.
But we had our circumstances squeezed to a point to where I got to that big book jumping off point where something was going to have to shift.
Yeah.
And because I had that proverbial fork in the road.
Yeah.
We were either going to go down a very bad path. Mm-hmm. Or make this turn that we made, and we had no idea what this path. We really had no idea which one was. Looking back in the rearview mirror today,
right?
I know what that was going to do. I knew I was going to go to prison. You knew you were going to continue to go get in trouble, and if you continued to do what you were doing, those consequences you were receiving that caused you to be on home incarceration and other things just like me, those were only going to happen worse. Those don't turn back. It's not like
and that was the scary piece.
Well, you've already been on home incarceration. So we're not going to do that this time. We're just you're grounded.
Yeah. I knew it was getting worse too. Yeah, and that was the scary part because like each time it did get worse and it got more expensive and it got more cumbersome to deal with and
embarrassing.
And,
the
it
load
scared
you're
me,
putting on your parents and your loved ones, and you start feeling that.
Yeah, because I never had pictured for myself I had a pretty high opinion about me growing up and even for the large part during my drinking career too. But I of course thinking that I was somehow fitted for jail or that I would possibly end up being there for long term. Like that never registered. That was never something. There was obviously never a goal, but that just seemed odd to me. Like I feel out of place. Like this is not where I'm supposed to be. But yet I was.
Certainly had that won't happen to me.
Right.
And when that can't happen to me.
Right.
But I walked on that razor edge, man. You're talking about the 3 things, and it made me think. I take a lot of writings, and I see stuff that the sayings and little paragraphs, different things. And there's one from Carl Jung, and I hear where I actually heard it said the first time was read in a Wayne Dyer thing. You know who Wayne Dyer is?
Yes. Yeah.
And so it says, this is what's Carl Gustav Jung. Thoroughly unprepared, we take the step into the afternoon of life. Worse still, we take this step with the false presupposition that our truths and our ideals will serve us as hitherto. But we cannot live the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning. For what was great in the morning will be little in the evening, and what was in the morning true at evening will have become a lie. So he talks about like a morning of life, an afternoon of life, and the evening of life.
Yeah,
you know,
kind of
and how that
to
shift is, you know, the rules that we were using in the morning
right
are no good in the afternoon. And the morning and afternoon rules don't work anymore when we're in the evening part, you know. And I don't know where those lines are at. You know, the evening would make me think I'm getting old kind of thing, but I don't really think that's what's going on. I think you can actually kind of, like you might have come into an evening of life in your sobriety, like you were saying, you know, you had that period where you were in your morning part that you talked about, and then the drunken, the using, and all that.
Right.
And so you got to have, you know, well, how old were you when you got sober?
25.
Yeah. So I mean, darn man, I mean that's kind of it's a little bit of like a mission for me today.
What, to get somebody
like when guys come to me young,
and get them out
of
the
to try to sell them on the idea that you don't have to wait till you're 45 like I did.
Right.
You know, to do this. And, you know, and I get a couple guys, and, you know, like I got a guy in his 20s right now, 28 years old, and he's realizing these promises. And he didn't have to go as far as me and you did.
Right.
He didn't have to get it. You know, he's actually evaded most of the trouble to date, but was able to actually realize, and by getting with us and seeing what we have, you know, our group particularly, because it's, you know, there is that sparkle, it shines pretty bright in our little peer group. That he actually was able to grab a hold of this and go, yeah, man, I am one of y'all, and I want to avoid that. Yeah. I don't want to take the elevator to the bottom floor.
Right.
You know, you know, because you get to bypass that misery, man. You are getting a lottery ticket to get these principles in your life early on without having to really get in any trouble.
Yeah, and I feel the same way, and I feel extremely blessed that I was able to get it as early as I did, because, you know, I've gotten to enjoy the last 16 years. 'Cause I'm 41. How old did you? I'm trying to remember what age you were when you first got sober.
My current sobriety happened when I was 45, but it was 4 years before that. So I actually come into AA when I was about 41.
Right.
And stumbled. And, you know, I got a year of recovery out of the gates when I first got here. Now, what it was, you know, I was still thinking I could use other stuff. I went a year not drinking. I did the thing you did, but I wouldn't come clean with it, you know, and you see where it took me.
Yeah.
So, you know, we live in that, we keep those, you know, we're only as sick as our secrets kind of thing. You keep that secret, and it will. So the fact of the matter is, we don't get to skate on anything, really. We don't ever get away with this shit.
No.
It's going to catch up.
Truth always
with
catches up. It does.
And
you might get away with it for a time, but it'll always come out.
So, you know, I had a shaky foundation, and when the life's certain trials and low spots hit,
right,
my foundation crumbled. You know, and I went right back to doing what I was doing before. But so I bounced around. So I got sober when I was 45. My current sobriety date, I was 45.
Yeah, so you just kind of, helped kind of sell the point for me. I mean, you know, so yeah, of course I feel blessed, you know, because I'm not even 45 yet. I'm 41. I'm getting there. I just got there this past month.
But you get to realize all that sobriety.
I did. I got
years,
I got 16 good years under my belt. You know, and I feel like I've got a lot of life still ahead of me, you know, or, you know, my whole life ahead of me still. So, so I feel immensely blessed.
Yeah, I know some other stories. I know there's some things about some, and I don't know what they call them, the Holy Rollers.
The Holy Roller groups, yeah, that was the nickname that we gave ourselves, I guess, for our own little support group or little band of brothers that we all ran around with together early on. Because but that was started by, you know, Christopher C., you know, our current sponsor. So yeah, that could fast forward to.
I mean, I'm not meaning to jump it forward, but I was just trying to.
No, you're good. Yeah, so I changed sponsors from Bart to Christopher right before year 2, and so yeah, when Christopher started sponsoring me, he had already had, you know, several other guys that were, you know, around him or that he was working with or that, you know, that were a part of his little support group. And so I kind of fit right in, and you know, of course, our little group grew. You know, as I started sponsoring more guys and other bodies, you know, it just, you know, our little support group kept growing, and so we nicknamed ourselves the Holy Rollers, and it was, you know, mainly because it pissed off the old timers.
Yeah.
But no, it was just a name that we used for ourselves, and you know, we went to meetings together, we hung out together, we did all kinds of social, you know, stuff together, and it was a tight little group. It really was, you know. And you know, I've developed a lot of friendships from that group, you know, and some of them are still around. You know, there's several guys I can think of, probably, you know, at least 3 or 4 right off the top of my head. I won't mention names and stuff, but you know, there were several, like, you know, 3 or 4 at least that are still here today, still sober, never really, you know, hit any hiccups from sobriety, and still, you know, still going. Some left, you know. Trying to remember if anybody died. I don't know. I mean, but I know some left, some went back. You know, some went back out, or some, you know, faded, or moved away, or something to that effect. But yeah, I mean, you know, it was, you know, that's the cool thing about this deal. I mean, we don't do this alone. I mean, as a whole. I mean, you know, you can go into any meeting anywhere in the anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world. You know, and not know a single soul walking in, and you will feel like you feel like you're welcome, you know. Yep. And that's the really cool thing about this deal. I don't think anything else like that really exists. Right. You know, it just, not that I've ever witnessed, you know. I've witnessed quite a bit.
I had the opportunity to sit in a meeting in Japan where nobody spoke English.
Right, I remember you sharing about that, yeah.
And the magic still was in that room, you know, and the camaraderie. Right. And, you know, I had that little experience of when they were reading how it works, and I'm following along in my big book, and I think we're reading how it works. You know? Yeah. I don't know, but I'm guessing. Yeah. And it seemed like it, because there's a cadence in some of the readings and stuff.
There is.
You know?
There's a cadence.
That still was going through across the language barrier. But when he got to the end there, and he said, what I know today, you know, what in our language is make clear 3 pertinent ideas. And he said, A, B, and C, and C, you know, but he went black. You know, he spoke Japanese after the A, B, and C, and I was there, my fingers in the book, following along, man, and chills shot up my neck and arms.
Because you felt connected. You instantly felt.
You know, there I was following along, and they were in a different language, and
it's good stuff.
Like I said, you know, they couldn't. I shared in that meeting, and they couldn't understand a word I said, and I couldn't understand a word they said, and it didn't fucking matter.
I freaking love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. Where else do you get to do that, right?
Yeah.
You know,
there isn't. Like I said,
the guy was standing outside the meeting smoking a cigarette, doing, you know, because I could tell I was the right spot. You know, there's a guy over there, you know, leaning over an ashtray, smoking a cigarette outside of church. You know, where else does that happen to, right? Where guys gather outside church to smoke. Yeah. And what he's there, and I went up and said AA to him, and I pointed at the sign on the door. Man, he snubbed out that cigarette, and he was there to help me. You know, here took me in. You know, you got to take off your shoes over there and put on your little sandals, and it was just cool from the get go, man.
And I don't know if it's because, like, you know, our life depends on it so much, you know, right, like if that's the gravity of that, if that's what kind of, like, you know, peaks us up. The only other thing I could think of possibly, like, maybe, like, you know, some of the military guys who've seen, like, action or something like that, you know, maybe the
combat buddies,
the comrade, no the camaraderie.
It's a little bit like a combat survivor kind of.
I'm not a military guy, so I mean, I can't speak on that experience, but, you know, I bet if I pose that question to a few of them, I'm assuming that's probably the second closest thing to what I'm talking about, what we're talking about here. But anyway, yeah, so that was the name of our little group. And we did a lot of stuff together, man. We enjoyed a lot of good years, you know, running around and being of service and you know, spreading the message, and, you know, and of course, we're helping ourselves in the same process by, you know, treating our disease, by, you know, by doing those things. And, you know, got to enjoy a lot of good stuff and a lot of good life. You know, and somewhere in that process, you know, it's something I was going to talk about because it was kind of a huge deal for me, at least. You know, it kind of ties back to that men's meeting. You know, sitting in that men's meeting for as long as we did, you know, you kind of quickly realize, you know, there's about 150 guys in there almost religiously every week. You know, it would change. The people in the meeting would change, but it was almost always 150, 160 dudes. You know, and when it's just dudes sharing, you know, there's a certain, like, I don't know, like it's, like it becomes painfully clear that most of us have some type of issue with our dad topic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And And of course, I clearly did, as I shared in part one, that, I grew up not knowing my father, and, and that causing a lot of angst and stress and, and fear and, and insecurity in me, for just, because that's not natural, it's just not normal. And, there's a longing there, there's a hole, there's a void that needs to get filled. And I know some of my drinking, helped fill some of that. I know some of my drink is related to that.
Yeah.
A lot of it just because it's just my nature, how I'm wired, and, it's just how my body likes, when that stuff enters my body. But a lot of that's responsible for that, not all of it, but some. And so, I got to figure it out pretty quickly sitting in that meeting every week for the first couple of years, and hearing guy after guy after guy share about, this hole that they feel because this because they've never gotten right with their dad, or their dad died, and, they never got to, show him that they got sober. It's just, that really weighed on me, and it touched me, but it also weighed on me because it felt like, it was speaking to me, like I needed to move forward with this. And one of the things that I had told myself, back 25, 26, those first year or two, was I did not want to do all this work, going through these steps and, reinventing my life and, going through all this trouble, to just wake up one day at 40 years old, and 40 was like the round number I used to always use. Like I don't want to get 15 years down the road and realize that I could be further in life, or I could have achieved a lot more if I had only tackled this dad topic early on, And so I pushed myself and urged myself to like make that a priority, to seek him out. And so it's kind of an interesting story, really. At least I think. And so growing up, I had heard stories, about my dad, but never really about anybody else, on that side. Like my mother would tell me things if I asked, and she never really I think it's important for me to say, because he's probably going to hear this one day. I think it's important for him to hear me say that she never badmouthed him. She told me the truth, she told me things that happened, but she also would always, label him and classify or say, things like, that needed to be said, that he was an alcoholic, and that, when he was sober, when he wasn't drinking, that he was a great guy, really charismatic. Everybody loved him. But when he drank, different deal. It was a different story. And so I think it's important for me to say that, because I know he's going to hear this. And
right.
And I don't want him thinking that, she badmouthed him all those years, because that's not
another
the case.
Little bit of a miracle about this little podcast thing, is that we get to let some people know maybe some things that they get to hear
Right.
Like this.
I think he's heard that from me before, but just
say it once enough, again, right?
Huh?
That reaffirming.
Yeah,
I think our parents. I have that a little bit with my father, is that he's got himself on a hook, and it's hard to get him off the hook.
All right.
And I think I've done the proper work there, but as a father, I think it's really hard to get free of what impact you had on why their son is the way he is. You know
right.
what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
And so he can't hear that enough.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think, it's important. It's definitely important. So I'd made the decision, at least internally for me, that I was going to move forward with that process, and I'd floated it past my mom at the time. And of course she was less than thrilled initially. She reacted pretty harshly to that, against it, because, she wanted to protect me, because she had her own conception about, that family and, how things were, how things were left back then, because she hadn't talked to him or seen him. I don't know, God, at that time, close to 25 years. I mean, I was 25, 26 at the time. I think that I was approached 20. I might have been 26 and a half, but it's pretty much like she vanished as well. Like when she left with me and divorced my dad during that first, year of my life, she never looked back. And I don't think she ever talked to any of them ever. And so she was naturally, very apprehensive about me going into I guess in her mind, probably like the Lions did, I guess she thought that, she didn't know what to expect either. And so she tried to talk me out of it. And of course I was pretty steadfast with what I wanted. And I was like, look, so I kind of had to tell her, look, I'm asking for some guidance. I'm not really asking for your permission. Like I'm doing this either with or without you. You can either help or not, but I'm moving forward. And so I think once she thought, saw that I was serious, she floated out like, well, okay, I think you could probably reach out to, your grandfather on that side, your dad's dad, because I heard through the grapevine, through, mutual friends back, connected to the family years ago, that he was trying to get sober. So that was all I had to go on. So I was like, well, what's his name? How do you know his name? So she gave me his name. I hung up with her and immediately called the operator. You could do that. I think you still can. You could literally just dial 0. You don't have to, like, I didn't Google anything. I didn't ask Siri.
I don't know. Today,
I hit
can you do
0.
that?
Yes. I'm old school. I hit 0. I don't know. You gonna try it?
No, I do have an old school phone in the basement, a rotary phone that still works.
I think
in the
you
basement.
can do it from your. I think I did it from a cell phone.
Really?
Yeah.
Hit dial 0.
We gotta try it right now.
Operator, can you give me the number of
to anything? Yeah. So I called the operator. And of course I knew that Columbus, Indiana. That's where I'm from, and that's where I started. I'd asked if they had a listing for Charlie M. and Charlie Morris. He's passed now. I can say his name. And they said, well, we got 2. I go, well, pass me through to the first one. And I knew enough about. I knew my dad had a brother and 2 sisters, so he was one of 4 kids, and I knew their names. And that's pretty much all I knew. And I knew my grandma's name, Rosie. So I knew enough of the names to quiz somebody, So I called him up and asked if a guy answered, and I said, "Is this Charlie Morris?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." I introduced myself. I said, "Well, actually, I didn't introduce myself. I didn't say my name at first." I said, "Okay." I said, "This is going to sound a little weird, but just hang in there with me. I'm not a salesman. I was like, I'm going to ask you some questions." I said, "I'm going to ask you about 2 or 3." And he said, "Okay." And I said, "Did you have a son named Jeff Morris?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Do you have a daughter named, Cindy?" And, he said, "Yes." And I kind of went through, I think I went to one more name, and he spoke up. He said, "Branden." That's all he said. It's Branden. And I said, "Yes." So he knew. I guess he was expecting. He said, I was wondering when I was going to get this call one day. And, oh, man. I mean, it was an emotional moment. I mean, I'm getting emotional right now just thinking about it. It took me back for a second.
Yeah, man.
It was a powerful kind of a little deal right there. Totally wasn't expecting that, Like I literally just minutes before had succumbed to solidify my mind. I'm doing this, I'm going to do it. And within a few short minutes, probably within the half hour, I was on the phone with him. I mean, that's pretty crazy, know. And he was only an hour and 15 minutes up north from me. And so we made a deal. I was like, well, I can't remember if it was that day or the very next day. I think it was the very next day. I went up there and met him and spent the entire day with him, had breakfast, lunch, and dinner with him all day. And we just got to talking and got to know each other. And so, so I told him that obviously the purpose for my, seeking him out was to, seek out my dad, because I didn't really, and I made sure I made it very clear, like, look, I'm not really looking for like a relationship. I'm 25 years old. I'm past the whole, I don't need a dad to play catch with me in the backyard. Yeah. I just don't think it's natural for me to not have at least ever said I could, have ever met him. I need to confront this. Right. I want to look the man across, in the face, and I want to be able to say to myself that I have met the dude. I have put a face to the name, and I can kind of check that box, if you will. And that was literally my only purpose for all of that, because I just felt like I should. It just felt, like that was the right thing to do at the time. And and so of course he let me know. It's like, well, I don't really know where your dad is. He's been out there in the madness for a while, and I sadly haven't heard from him in a while, like a couple of years, I think. At that point, he's like, I don't really know. But finding some background about my granddad that day, I spent with him. He at that time I think was somewhere around 25 to 27 years sober. The last 15 of those, he had not. I think the last 10 or 12 of those, he was not involved in AA. The first 15, he was hot and heavy, like a pillar in that community, and was hugely responsible for their version of like our token clubs here locally. Mm-hmm. He was hugely responsible for that particular clubhouse up there, its inception, and but I think after about 15 years, for whatever, I never really got a full explanation of why, but he just kind of drifted. Life took hold, and he drifted away, but stayed sober. Some would venture to say dry, but he stayed sober.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I mean,
I didn't know him, so I don't know. But there's just thrown out terms that kind of get correlated with somebody who's not still hanging around the rooms.
But wasn't giving off like the dry vibe to you, like a miserable dry drunk? Because that's what I.
No, he didn't look miserable because he was married at the time, and his wife was super sweet, and and he looked to be.
I mean, you can start practicing these principles, and I think you can your recovery can survive on that.
Right.
Where when I think of dry, I think of like somebody that is suffering still.
Yeah, and he did not come across to me as a man that was suffering. At the time he was, just an average old man. Kind of, but he was, he
put in all
pretty
that
content
service work and stuff. I mean, carry it. You can.
Yeah, he seemed like he was living an enjoyable life, and his family liked him, from what I could tell, and so like there were no red flags, nothing, and
cool.
So I mentioned to him that okay, well, that's fine if you don't know where he's at, that's cool, I can wait. He said that he had told me that he would do some searching, and as soon as he'd find out, as soon as he found anything out, he'd let me know. And so that's kind of where that left. We left. Oh, I know I was going to finish up on something. So he had. And so for the next 6 months or so, that first 6 months to the first year, we stayed in touch. Not like every day. It wasn't like a new relationship blossomed, but there were. He invited me up to a family reunion, and I got to meet a lot of people who I'd never met before, who were aunts and uncles and cousins. It was a huge family. It was like 40 people in that family, and I still don't know most of their name or half of their names because there's a lot of people to try to learn, but I met a lot of people, and went to some AA conferences with him, or at least one that I can remember up there in Columbus. I stayed with him a couple of times. We did things. We had multiple interactions like that, and then today came one day. I got this phone call. And of course, and he felt bad because he had, he couldn't find out where Jeff was. And I think he actually knew prior to, to him telling me where he was, but I think he kind of held on to it for a while. I don't think he knew how to approach me. But anyway, he finally approached me one day and said, well, I found out where your dad is. I was like, oh, great, cool, where is he? And he said, well, he's in jail, for manufacturing crystal meth charge. And I was like, oh, well, that doesn't sound good for him. It sounds like he's probably going to be there for a bit. And he's like, yeah, at least another year or so. And at this time, it's important. I guess he had called me like prior to all this, probably like that first month. He called me one day after I'd met, during that first month, he called me one day and he let me know that he took it as a sign that me calling him out of the blue that day, he took it as a sign that he needed to get back into the AA rooms. And so he immediately started going, after that meet with me. And I was like, oh, wow, well, that's cool. And so we got to share, some sobriety time together,
Super cool.
Yeah, he invited me up. I went up there multiple times and, did meetings with him. And I want to even say, like, I spoke up there once or twice. It's a little. Some of that stuff's a little foggy, but we had some sobriety time together, which was really cool. And I got to meet a lot of his people and whatnot, and that was really fun. But then one day I was in Louisville, was working with this architect, and at his farm, and I got this phone call from one of the cousins that I met at one of those family reunions that I just went to. And all of a sudden, and this guy's crying. And I've talked to Steve multiple times, and he was always a real happy guy. He's married, got 5 kids and loving life. He calls me boohooing and crying. And I was like, oh, my God, what's going on? He's like, Branden, I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to say it. I'm like, yeah, spit it out. What's up? What happened? And he said, all I know is that your granddad is in the hospital. and he's not going to make it through the night. And I'm like, oh my God, what, was he in a wreck or something? What's going on? He's like, no, apparently he was very sick and he never told anybody. And apparently he's got brain cancer and it's inoperable and he's dying and he's not going to last the night. And it was a complete shock. I mean, because it was like, I just met this dude. What are you talking about? You know, but he was sick. He had brain cancer. I guess he knew it or a tumor, you know, and I guess he knew it years prior, but never told his wife, didn't tell anybody, kept it a secret, and didn't share it with me either. And I think that all happened within that first year of me meeting him, you know, and it was weird because like even the time leading up to that day that I got that phone call from Steve and my other cousin there, I could sense like almost to the point it was a little bit annoying, you know, like he was kind of like you could just I guess I got that vibe off of him that he was really pushing hard for me and my dad to meet. You know, he just by the way he would talk about it and how he would bring it up, there was just an extra level of importance to him that this took place, and he really, really wanted to happen. And of course, I was comfortable like with where things were left. I was like, "Look, dude, we got a plan. What do you what's the deal? I mean, he's in jail. We done talked about
what's the hurt?
Yeah, what's the hurt? Because we discussed once he told me he was in jail. He's like, yeah, he gets out in a year. I forgot to settle up on that. We had discussed that our plan of action would be to we'll just wait till he gets out. That's probably something that we'll wait and meet him once he gets released. You know, he's got enough on his plate, and that just made sense. I was like, yeah, sure, fine, whatever. And so, but I didn't know all the time. But then, you know, of course, you know, thinking about it after the fact, after you know finding out, like, well, okay, well, the dude had brain cancer. He was, you know, he knew things that we all didn't know, that he wasn't going to be here much longer, and he really wanted to see us together. And so Steve said, you know, look, you got to, you know, if you want to see him, if you have anything to say to him, if you want to see him again, you've got to get up here now because he's not going to make it through the night. I was like, okay, I'm dropping my tools. I'm out the door. I'm headed your way. You're an hour and a half from me. I'll be there. Just you know, what hospital? And he said, but one more thing, you know, and this was, I love the ending. He's like, one more thing. I'm like, what else? He's like, your dad's going to be here.
Oh.
And I was like, what? And he's like, your dad got released from jail, I want to say like a month ago or just recently, and he's on home incarceration, and he was able to get a special release to come up here for the day, you know, for the night. To visit, yeah, for bereavement and all that. And I didn't even know he was out. I didn't know he was on home incarceration. I mean, so that was like a shocking phone call for me. And I was like, and it didn't change. I was like, okay, I'm still coming.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, well, I guess today's the day I get to meet my dad, you know. So the interesting, of course, I'm kind of, you know, like I've got all kinds of emotions going on. So like I didn't even clean up. I just like, I think I actually did stop by and grab some clothes because I was I'd passed my house to go to Indy anyway. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna call Mom, let her know what's going on, just to check in. And so I called her, and she was luckily at home. And I said, hey, just letting you know, told her all the whole deal, and I'm not gonna rehash it here again. And she said, well, if you're going, I'm going with you, you know. And she said, come by and pick me up. And at first I tried to talk her out of it because I was like, you don't need to go through, you know, I understand your history. You don't need to do all that. And she pretty much threw down the mom hammer and was like, there's absolutely no way you're going up there without me. You know what I mean? And so it was just easier, honestly, in that moment for me just to say, okay, versus trying to talk down this
plus you have all like, probably a little bit like, I got this going to create a whole nother issue if I don't do this, you know.
Sort of. There was a lot of that. Yeah. There was a lot of that. 'Cause, I mean, you know, you're playing the tape all the way through. You're trying to see all the angles. Like, if she goes, that could throw a wrench into things. But if she doesn't go, I don't know. That yeah. And so there was a lot of that going on. Well, so I just said, fine. You know what? I ain't got time. I'm processing too many other feelings at the moment. Fine, I'll pick you up. Luckily, she only lived a mile off the interstate too. So I grabbed her. We're driving to Indy. And it was just very weird, you know, because at that time I'd only met a few of the people. I didn't meet all 40 yet. You know, I just met a few. So walking into this hospital, you know, Mom and I are walking in side by side. We're walking in the ground floor, and as we're walking like towards the elevators, there's this like mob of people, you know, like walking out of the elevators, like to go outside, you know, and of course, I've not seen any of these people that are coming toward me. I've never met any of them, but they're my family. I don't know it, but I figured out as we keep getting closer, because we probably were, 75 yards apart at first, but then as we're getting closer, I'm seeing their faces are changing. Like, they're having emotional reactions, and all they're doing is walking towards us, and we're the only ones there. And of course, I kind of look around, and I'm like, is something else going on behind me? There's nothing. Like, we're like the only thing that like logically makes sense. And so I very quickly, on the fly, within a matter of a few seconds, started figuring out, oh my God, this is obviously my family. And and of course, I'm looking at my mom, and of course, she's reacting much the same way they are. They're all crying, and it was just one of those powerful little exchanges where it looked like to me 30 years of bitterness and shame and remorse and animosity literally just kind of washed away through their tears rolling down their cheeks. It was really kind of a beautiful deal. And so that kind of set the tone. And of course, I'm looking around for anybody that I think might look like it could be my dad, because I'd only seen pictures of him when he was like a teenager, like at 20 years old. It was like the last picture I'd really seen of him. And nobody standing there looked like him, and of course, I'm getting introduced to people like my grandma and my aunt, and both my aunts and an uncle and their husband, the significant others, and great aunts and uncles. And it was just a big whirlwind for me, because not only am I going to say goodbye to my dying grandfather who I just met, but I'm also there to meet all these people who I've never met, who I've been longing to meet, and it was just I'd have to say, at that point, it was like the most powerful day I could say that I've ever experienced. I've since had 2 kids, and of course those kind of top the list. But at that point, it ranks number 1 on the powerful day list. And so, anyway, they say, look, your grandpa's upstairs. We'll take you up. And I walk in, and it was the most uncomfortable 2 or 3 minutes, I think, of everybody's life that was in that room. We walk in, and and my granddad's laying there, and my dad's standing next to him at the bed, kneeling down. He didn't really look at him. I think he felt me come in. I think somebody told him I was coming in, and he didn't look at me at first. And my dad's, current wife at the time was there, and she's bawling and crying, and I'd met her before many times up to this point. And so she walks up and gives me a big old hug that lasted a good long while. And there were other people in the room, like my aunts and uncles, direct children of my grandfather, and everybody's just like eerily quiet. It's just an eerily quiet space. And after my grandpa's wife, Patty, after she hugged me, I'm just kind of standing there, and I'm kind of looking around, and that's what we're kind of all doing, just looking around. Nobody's really speaking, nobody's really saying anything, and it just sat like that for several minutes. And finally I was able to speak up, and I was like, well, Dad, you want to go talk for a little bit, get a cup of coffee, and that's about the best thing I could come up with in that moment. Yeah. And he jumped on it and said, sure, and here we are, walking out of the room. I think I said something to my grandfather. I think I at least, I acknowledged him. There was a whole exchange there, obviously, but then after that, me and my dad walked out of the room and kind of let that energy leave the room, and let them, because, we're not here to, we're there to meet, or us meeting is a part of the deal, but my grandfather's dying, right. And his wife's right there. I didn't want that energy to be there. And so we go downstairs, and we were in the cafeteria probably 4 hours. Wow. Talking, and it was, I don't know, man. It was just a, like a powerful beyond powerful day for me. I mean, it was, I'm sure I'm probably boring the crap out of everybody else about the ramblings about my story, but it was a huge day for me. It was because it was a big deal.
How old do you think you were?
I was 26 and a half, I believe.
Oh, really? So
26 or 27, somewhere right in that range. I mean, I didn't look at the dates. Like we joked about this before.
If you knew, you was going to have to recall the story. But it was early in your recovery.
It was early, the first couple of years. so we were down there talking for a good long while, and it was a really, I got to say everything I needed to say. I had said everything that I wanted to say, and what was and I let him know very clearly that I wasn't looking for some long lasting relationship unless he wanted it, and of course I let him know that wasn't even going to be possible for me unless he was sober, not because like that was a requirement of mine, but necessarily like I was letting him know like I don't hang out with people who.
It'll be mighty tough to be around drinkers.
Right. It's like I have some friends who still drink, but they're not alcoholics and they don't have a problem with it. So that's okay for me. But anybody who needs recovery and is not in recovery, I don't hang with, because why? It doesn't make sense. I was like, so if you're not going to continue to be on the path of recovery, then there's no need for us to really maintain anything. I just my whole point was just I wanted to be able to do this right here. Say that I met you, looked at you, had a conversation with you, and I'm hoping that's going to be enough for me, honestly. And so, because I could tell he wasn't done, the vibe I got, of course, he's freshly out of jail from manufacturing drugs, you know what I mean? So I had no idea to know where he was really, and so, but I also wanted him to know that I wasn't like expecting anything or really looking for anything. I just, that what we were doing in that moment was exactly what I needed and wanted, and nothing else ever had to happen. Because I didn't know where he was at either on all that. And, it's pretty much said. So fast forwarding, moving on, over the next 6 months, we maintained some contact. I think he invited me up. He was involved, I think, jumping through some hoops, for his home incarceration. He had to go to some alcohol and drug classes there locally in Seymour, Indiana, where he was living. And he got, I guess he graduated from that deal, and he invited me up once or twice for a meeting. I think once for a meeting and then once for his graduation, which I went. And then we ended up going to a John Mellencamp concert together, because he was a big fan of John Mellencamp. They went to high school together back in the day. And I liked John Cougar's, music too, and so I bought tickets for us to go to Indy one time, to a concert of his. I thought, this would be something that's neutral. I like his music, he likes his music. To spend some time, and I drove up, picked him up, drove him all the way up there, and I could tell something was off, because he just didn't care. Like he was basically telling me that he was sober, and he kind of showed me that by the graduation of his little deal that he, at his drug classes. But the vibe that I got that day when I picked him up was different. I was like, this guy, he's not acting like a sober guy that I know. I know what sobriety looks like, and this ain't it.
Yeah.
And, he complained a few times, more than a few times actually, about the show, itself. Like, he this is probably one of the worst shows that I've seen him do. It was just like there was not a sense of gratitude at all for anything that he was, partaking in. Like, dude, your long lost son is here, picking your butt up, inviting you to go to a concert he's paid for, and
you're a bit negative.
Yeah, and so that was all I needed. I was like, okay. So I kind of figured out pretty early on that this dude's not sober, but I'm kind of sacked with him for at least the rest of the night. So I made the best I could with it, and got him back. And it came out shortly thereafter that he, obviously he admitted to me that he did relapse, and I think he ended up going back to jail for some time. A year, I think, is what it was. And it was during that process of that year that he was in, he started reaching back out to me pretty heavy, like writing letters to me all the time, like almost like multiple times a week. And it wasn't just like a page, it was like 4 or 5, 6 page letters, front and back, just this huge barrage of like pouring of information. And and I could tell like the stuff that he was writing in the letters was that sounded more sober to me. You know what I mean? It sounded good, but at the same time, he was also locked up. I was like, I don't know if it sounds great, but I don't know if I trust it, because he's not. His freedom's been snatched from him. He's got nothing else better to do. I'm out here living life and trying to work and all that, and so. I wanted to buy into it, but at the same time, also categorize it as, on the reality scale, just like, I'm just going to table this, I want to see what he does when he gets out. And so I kind of made that very clear, that, look, it's cool if you want to do this, if you want to write to me and tell me all stuff, it's great, but don't expect much back from me, if anything at all, because I don't have the time like you do to sit around and write letters. I'm out here living and trying to stay sober and working with guys and and doing this and doing that, and don't really feel like I want to invest a whole lot. I want to see what you do when you get out, and once you get out and get a year sober, and then call me. That's kind of what I told him, and that's kind of how it went, honestly. He got out and he put some time together, and he tried to reach out a few times, and I think I still was kind of a stickler on, I'm not investing a whole lot right now. I need you to see more. But anyway, so fast forward, and he ends up doing well, and he ends up, being what I convinced, that was legit. And now I can say that dude is 9 years sober. And
you come to like a birthday last
year,
he's kind of,
and today I can say he's one of my best friends, and today I'm not leery. He's already made it clear he's coming this month.
What's that, the 26th?
Yeah, that's the last Tuesday this month, the 26th.
He'll be here in a minute.
Yep, he came last year's, and he's been to many more before that. But
I just can remember last year for whatever reason.
Yeah, he's coming. He'll be back again. He's always been interested in my sobriety as well.
Very, very cool.
So we have that to share now. We share that sobriety life together, because I'm I'm skipping over a lot of stuff, but but our relationship has continued to grow, and grow and grow and grow, and it was fast. I mean, once he was like sober, and like really sober and like meaning it. It was like a fast friendship that took hold that I didn't expect, and it was one of the really cooler, unexpected things that's happened to me in sobriety, that, has been kind of mind blowing, really, because today, like, I trust him with my kids. I could trust him with anything,
Right, yeah. Once you got that recovery under your belt, man, we're pretty doggone good people.
Right. But that's just one. That's just one simple little topic,
but that's a big miracle.
It is. That's just one thing that I've gotten experience that has meant a boatload. It has meant so much to me, for my sobriety, because I think that is honestly, that helped settle an old score, on my soul.
Hell,
I really do. I think it helped.
And him too,
And him, for sure. And the family, because, now the family has me around, that they never had before, and I get to experience them, which I never had before. And my kids now get to experience them. And
the whole reconnect with the grandfather too, and there's things there that's just, there's some dynamics of where, you carry this stuff all the way to your deathbed or whatever, and you got this unfinished business. That nobody's sitting in their deathbed wishing they'd have worked more. What they're sitting there thinking about is what got left undone.
Right.
And and you get the chance to not have those. Anytime we get to close one of them up, and not have those regrets in life, be able to patch your relationship up. That's really ultimately what that's a huge thing about what this whole deal is about, man. Mm-hmm. Patching up them relationships, being connected with our loved ones.
Exactly. That there was so much of that I'm grateful for, because now I get to experience, a life with him. We're both sober, and there's not a single piece of me that doubts anything about him or anything that he's doing. Like, just over the years. It's just time tested. It's just. He's now one of the, most solid members and most, looked up, upon pillars in his group up there in Columbus. He's one of the go-to guys. He was one of the people that took the meetings back to the jails. Like AA was able to go to the jails system, up there for the longest time, and then at some point it got booted for something that, some sort of reason. My dad was the one that ended up going back and talking to the sheriff, and ended up convincing him that it was needed. And
it's a good thing to come back.
Yeah, and he was instrumental in helping with that. But he's involved. He's doing all the stuff that I did and more, honestly. for his group up there. And it shows, I mean, he's important up there. I mean, he is a solid member, and he's got, so it's just really cool for me to, like, I just never thought that would happen. I mean, this was a guy that I grew up hearing just, not good stuff about sometimes,
yeah, right,
and, because of the disease and putting in my mind, that kind of categorizing that whole deal, him and that whole relationship is I just kind of wrote it off and thought that it was never going to be anything, and that I don't know, it's just one of those like sobrieties. It takes you down pat. Like I just never saw that coming. Honestly, yep. I never saw that or anything that spun off from that coming my way. And my mom got a chance to heal too, because there's a whole other backstory with her. I might save that for a different time, but there's just a lot of healing that took place during that moment. During that me and him meeting, and our families kind of connecting, hooking up for the first time. It's just been a huge healing experience for all involved. A lot of lives got changed from that.
Great things will come to pass for you and countless others.
Right. But so that was early on, and I'm still enjoying that. That piece today. So I guess was it 9? Yeah. So somewhere in there, I think I kind of led in this early, and I only really finished up on it. But like the first 4 years of my sobriety, I didn't date anybody, which was, hugely important for me, because I didn't have anybody that attached to me to where I had to worry about, like if I want to morph and change from where I am now to something else, is this person next to me still gonna? Are they going to be trying to pull me back because they don't want to see me become this new guy? So that was really cool, to live that way. But, and it helped me, hone and as far as like, I got to find out, I got to reinvent myself and got to find out, what I stood for, what I don't stand for. Those were, huge principle, things to kind of solidify for myself was.
Yeah, you get in touch with yourself. That's that's another part of this whole recovery thing is getting to know you, and if you're.
So I'm a big proponent of that.
Yeah, if you're, and not to say, a lot of guys that I know, are in relationships when they hit recovery and those things get patched up and all that. But,
right.
I kind of had a similar kind of thing here. I've been able to like not really be tied down, so to speak. I don't want to use that language too hard on, in recovery, give a chance to, and then I'm like you, I think somebody walked into your life, right? And then that, but you were solid by then, and that's another one of these things is that if you're not, I like the way Scott Lee says that his newcomer says, you are too sick to have a healthy relationship.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And anybody that would want to be with you right now is sick also.
Yep.
And anybody that's healthy, you'll just screw that up.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Or if they're smart enough, they'll just not even.
Right. Yeah. If they're healthy, they'll bug.
Yeah. They'll recognize pretty quick. But I say all that. I said that to kind of lead up to where I'm going with it. But but during that early first 3.5, 4 years was monumental for me to forge who I was going to be, and because I was trying to become the healthiest person that I could become, because there was 2 topics that we kind of talked about this before we got the podcast started, that were largely on my list, the woman topic and the job topic, because I was still largely confused about both. And
I joke around and like they say, resentment's the number one offender, but I'm really thinking it's relationships and employment.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think for a man, especially because that's, I don't know. I mean, it's just so much about kind of like who we are. It's like that's where we gain a lot of our identity from,
yep.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
The girl on my arm and the job I have. That's where my identity hangs. It's hanging on those 2 hooks.
Yeah. And I won't go into the other like why it is the way it is. But yeah, it's just the way it is.
Yep.
For whatever reason, it's just the way it is. And and I was not different. I was the same for me too. Dated around for the first. I got an opportunity to date. 4 or 5 different, we got in 4 or 5 different relationships that were all good, and it was really the first time I think the longest relationship I had prior to getting sober was 3 to 6 months. That was kind of my MO, 3 to 6 months. Most of them are more than 3. I had a few 6-monthers, but I throw that 6 month in there because it's important, right? But 3 to 6 months was the longest that any relationship I ever had. And honestly, dating people, I was scared, because I didn't know what the sober Branden was going to be like in a relationship. I never experienced that guy. So there was a piece of me that was kind of gun shy after, a while, because I didn't quite know what to expect, I don't know. Will I be jealous or will I not be jealous? Will I be, weirded out about this or not? Because I don't know. I've never, got to expect or experience feeling that way, and sober, with a sober mind frame. And so, but going out of the gate, dating a few women, a lot of those things went well. I didn't realize a relationship could end, and you didn't have to be killing each other. Yeah. You know what I mean? I didn't know that was possible, yep. But that happened multiple times. Yeah.
Ways amicably.
Yeah, what a concept! I didn't know that was possible, but I got to experience that. But leading up to but then I found a woman who I guess I couldn't live without, and started dating, and within about a year and a half, I knew that I wanted to get married, and so I asked, she said yes, and fast forward, we decided kids we thought we wanted to be in our future, and we tried, and we gave birth to our son. Back in 2012, he's now 6, and I've got a daughter as well. She's almost 4, coming up in another 2 months.
Yeah, man.
And so I've been married in this relationship for 9 years, and I've been married for 7, a little over 7 now, and I've been living the family man lifestyle for the last since year 11, I guess, in my sobriety. And before all of that, I started a business, a masonry repair and restoration, business for myself, because I stumbled into that world and ended up, wanting to do my own deal and that's been a very lucrative, job for me. So the 2 topics that I came in to sobriety, as a big question mark for me, have been answered and have been very fulfilling and keep me very, 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 very busy. I don't ever have a whole. That's the one thing that I do not have today is free time. Really,
I like to say that I am blessed with a full life.
Exactly, and that's really what it is. It's just a full life. Sometimes it feels like it's too
busy
full.
Sounds like a complaint.
Well, you know what? You're right. It does. It does sound like
blessings,
that's a very full life. Yeah, that's a better way to phrase that, really.
And I know
that's essentially what it is. They're all blessings.
I've got to have an air of gratitude around it, right?
Yeah.
Because this stuff could dry up.
Yeah.
There's another place I can go.
I could get one envelope and some of it could dry. Yeah. It's So
and I might be putting some words in the mouth and whatever, but there was a period of this getting busy and family life thing that you kind of set your recovery also on back burner a little bit. You're still engaging, you're still coming to meetings and doing some things, so you didn't set it all the way down.
No, not all the way down. But yeah, I guess I had trouble because I've been thinking about it because you're right, because I have been kind of reawakening, which means that there was a point where I kind of fell asleep, and that's kind of what happened. There was a point just rearing 2 kids who were still babies, really. Toddlers now, but
that will make you
busy. It takes a lot of energy, and of course I don't want to just be dad. I want to be a good dad, and I want to invest energy into that, and I do. And so, and there's only so many hours a day. There's only so much energy. Sometimes you just don't have enough to continue to give, all the you want. So some things take a back burner, and one of the things that I thought I was, fairly good, the topic that I thought, I could probably enjoy a little luxury here because I've been sober a long time. I'm not going anywhere. I know who I am. I know that, drink is not a solution. I felt good on that front. It's like it's okay for me to focus my energy on the family and on the business and let that take priority. And I don't necessarily know if I would say that I disagree with that even sitting here now, but I think I probably let off the gas a little too much. I probably left it on that back burner maybe a little too long. I was still coming weekly. I'm still staying in touch. But
in my 4 years, I've seen you on a regular basis.
Yeah, but I was literally, I think, just
but not really engaged.
Probably doing the bare minimum. Yeah, because I wasn't fully engaged. And some of that honestly boils down to probably being a little too overworked, a little too overwhelmed at times, and and a little too worn out, a little too tired, and maybe just not quite, knowing how to, well, I don't think I even realized that I had, disengaged as much as I had. It's taken me getting, reinvigorated from you, little band of hooligans I'm running with now. Mm-hmm. It's taken me, it's again kind of goes back to what the saying we said, you don't know what you don't know. I didn't know that I had gone that far, that I had slipped that much, and I really think that's kind of what happened. I just was on the back burner too long, and failed to kind of realize that. But what's really interesting is part of what helped allow me to see that has taken place. Was watching all the you guys around me that I was seeing weekly, seeing the light in you, and Shane and Chris and Kevin and all the guys that we run with. And I probably should have never said any of those names because anybody I don't say is probably going to get mad now. Sorry, fellas.
But we do. We got a hell of a crew around us.
We do. I mean, it's honestly the
newcomers
strongest.
coming up and lights coming on left and right. Plus a lot of established time too. Guys like you that's got some. That has a lot to share. Christopher and I'll start doing names too, but I'll leave people out. But there's a really nice swath of recovery from brand newcomers to guys that are up in the 30 years. Nick. We're gonna have to get like a roll call out to make sure that
Quentin.
Yeah.
Start naming people so I can say. Mike Jones.
Watch out for last names.
Yeah, sorry about that. I can't say his name without saying the last.
It's hard.
For some reason. I don't know. For some reason that I have to compare the two. Compare the two together.
Yeah, we do.
But all those guys, all you guys, like seeing.
Well, I heard a lot of stories about you, because I was having the same sponsor, but I to be completely honest, didn't see that, right? Because you were doing the thing where, and
I was just coming to
speak for you. You come and you'd be a little late.
Yeah.
And you'd hang around for a minute, but you usually weren't around for real long after the meeting.
Right.
But I'm really glad to see completely like this engagement that you have today.
Right.
The other thing about that is probably that other deal probably is not sustainable, at least in my feelings. Now I don't know, kind of even like your grandpa re-engaged into AA after a while. A sign he got one, and he was able to hang on. But darn, like where I got something in my heart that says, I probably could do that actually and do a disengage and be okay for a certain amount of time.
Right.
I really do.
Right.
I think I could probably survive that. But I also think just as strongly that there will be an end to that somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know where it is, but at some point I would trip over something that would cause me to think that a drink was a okay idea, or probably, be honest with you, probably be like a pill or be something like that I think is okay again.
Right.
And that would set me off into the races.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've had those same thoughts over and over again for a long, long time because, I would like to think that the idea is firmly supplanted enough in me that I know that would never be a solution, and I would never pick up a drink ever, now, today, just because I've had too much time. But then again, I've sat in meetings and watched guys walk in and say, I just gave up 28 years.
Yeah, we had a guy come in not too long ago who was up in that 20-something years.
And I've seen other guys like him prior to, back in the earlier years of my recovery, done the same thing. I gave up 15 years. I gave up 22 or whatever. And they all pretty much say the same thing, you know, that it snuck up on them and they didn't realize how far down they'd gone. And, you know, and so I think it's possible. I think it's possible for any of us to probably, you know, to slip up. And, you know, I guess it would be arrogant for me to think otherwise, right?
Yeah, right.
And
too many stories otherwise. And the other thing is, too, is that there's also a big segment of people that have that kind of time that have a hell of a time getting back.
Yeah.
If at all. Sometimes they don't make it. A lot of them don't make it back. Like the guy, you know, well, we saw the one guy a couple weeks ago, and, you know, I ain't seen him back yet.
Right.
You know, they're coming in and doing that.
But Morty, like, to go back to real quick to what kind of, like, when I first started coming around you guys, you know, at the Spiritual Underground, that meeting had already been established. See, a lot of times, like when Christopher would start something up or start a new meeting, I was generally like there on the ground floor, you know what I mean? And but you guys had already been operating for, I want to say 6 months to a year.
Yeah, I really don't. I wasn't there for the beginning of the Spiritual Underground either.
Oh, you weren't?
Nope.
Okay, but to my knowledge, I mean, it was.
I think Brian just had a celebration last year. I think it was the 5th year. I think of it. So, you know, my sobriety, I'm about 4. So I think probably for about a year or so it was going on before I stumbled into it.
Have I been around the whole time you've been around? Or were you already in that meeting? I
seem to recall seeing you, but, you know, them first, like you said a minute ago, those first years, I have that thing where I remember people really well. I remember who was in the very first Spiritual Underground meeting I walked into. It was in Brian's basement, and I can almost tell you I bet I could hit 80 to 90%. Right. On who was sitting there that night.
I bet you could too.
And where they were sitting.
Yeah.
In relation to me too.
I'm impressed with your memory.
Yeah, I've got some come back, and
like,
that faces and names and stuff is certainly a gift that I have. And I don't remember you at that meeting.
Yeah, I know I wasn't at that meeting because I remember Connor talking about like they were going to do it, and for whatever reason, I was like,
this was just
too committed, too busy, didn't have the time.
I went. Yeah, you know, some people think that when I say that because the meeting started in Brian's basement and went there, and then they moved to doing something else.
It was pretty quickly they moved.
But this was just a night that the church was closed, and they didn't want to skip a meeting, and Brian was hosting it, and so I just stumbled in because I remember I had a buddy that was offering me that, you know, he was telling me I should come to this Tuesday night meeting. There's something special about it, and I had my walls up, you know, because it couldn't be that good.
Right.
I mean, you ain't got nothing for me.
Right. Yeah.
But I got a little bit of that sense of desperation for just circumstances. Ended up doing something, and I asked him if I could come. And I actually talked to him just the other day about this. I said, hey man, you still going to that Tuesday night meeting? He said, yeah. And I said, you going tonight? And he got a look on his face, you know, like it wasn't happening or whatever, you know. And he goes, oh man. He said, tonight the church is closed. So I thought, like, here I got the gumption up to ask him. And right, exactly. And he goes, well, it's in this guy's basement, you know. And I still remember going, well, can I go? You know, can I still go? And he's like, yeah. You know, but there was that little womp there that got me. And for a reason, man, that's I heard something that night that changed my life. You know, that was because we say the rest was history.
That's cool.
Because I knew that.
That's super cool.
I knew there's something going on there that was different than I'd heard any other places, any other meetings that I'd been to.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you had that experience, really. But so the point I was trying to make was like I just remember when I first came to that meeting, it just felt to me like there was already kind of like an established clique. And I was like, and I had trouble like breaking into it. Like I had trouble feeling like
being a part of,
feeling out like, how am I going to break in here, you know? And because I feel like it's already established, and normally I'm in the other position of being in the established position already and welcoming other people, and I don't really feel like I'm really a part of this group just yet. And so that was some of my apprehension. I'm not trying to blame any. I'm just saying that's just what I felt. Now whether it was reality or not, I have absolutely no idea.
That was already the disease starting to like ring on you.
Could have been.
Don't go there. Been. Yeah. Brandon, we don't want you going there.
Right. Because you guys are all super damn friendly.
They're all they're not for you. You don't. You can't fit in there, man. Just go back home.
Yeah. So I'm sure that's probably what that was. But that's what I felt. I don't think that was the reality, but that's what I felt. Yeah. But then, but I kept coming because, like you said, I mean, it was a freaking, it's a powerful group. And I've grown, to appreciate even more and more. I mean, it's almost daily. I mean, it literally is daily. just how powerful that this particular group is. I mean, I'm kind of amazed. Like I've never really seen anything quite like it before.
There's something special.
And I've been around, like a bit, and I've had some powerful fucking days. Like I just shared on some powerful stuff, and like I feel like I don't know. I'm blown away, man. Like I just, it's a piece of me. Like it's kind of like it doesn't believe it sometimes, but it actually happens. Like I'm not using today. I know that I'm not delusional. Yeah. Like I'm witnessing, something.
And you hear these guys come in and tell them same kind of stories that's going on with them. Of equal power. But a lot of guys are having a lot of powerful experiences in recovery.
Yeah, and a lot of these guys who I think are just powerhouses, are sitting on a year. 2 years. Some guys who've already done these podcasts, and that just blew me away because I'm thinking, because I'm looking at their experience at 2 years and what I'm seeing, and I'm thinking back to like my 2 years. I'm like, yeah, my stuff is good, but like these guys are like freaking stellar.
Yeah, there's something going on where they're like rocketing up into this level of recovery that most people, I get a little funny about when I start talking, but it's not uncommon that people come up to me and think I got more time than what I do.
Oh, I know.
And it's pretty.
You could easily get pegged for a long time, 20, 30, 40 years sobriety easy, and you're sitting on 4.
Yeah, and
which is
and
freaking
around our house,
amazing.
It is a fairly long time in a sense,
but
because all these guys
4 is a
2,
long time. 4 is a long time, but for the involvement that you have, and for just your presence and your energy, that I mean, it's just you're amazing.
Well, man,
all you guys are amazing. Yeah. And I just and I'm hard. And I keep saying this over and over. I'm trying to get to a point. It was seeing that in you guys daily, weekly, that made me curious, and it got me questioning. Comparing myself, if you will. I was doing that. And it got me doubting whether or not I was as healthy as I thought. And then I think it was a few months ago you had, I don't know if I asked or if you reached out or something, but you showed me about this group thread that you started up, or that you guys had started.
These chat groups we had.
Chat group, on the group me, thing. And at first, my initial reaction was, man, you don't know how busy I am. I ain't got time for all that. I think I might have even said something similar to that.
Is any of you some bitches got jobs?
And I believed 100% wholeheartedly everything, that whole sentiment. I did. I was like, God, what do y'all do when you're not around this meeting? I mean, it seems like you just hang out in this damn thread all day and chat all day long. I was like, I gotta work. What do y'all do? You guys are rich or something. I don't know. But anyway, so I remember being very kind of put off by, because I was overthinking, I was projecting, I was thinking that
contempt prior to investigation.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh, that full, exact definition, and I talked myself out of, not immediately hooking up, but then something was nagging at me, like I made that decision, like, you know what? I ain't got time for that. It's the hell with that. The hell with them. That's what I told myself. And then somewhere in there, that didn't sit right. Even me telling that to myself, like, that didn't sit right. I was like, and so I knew something was wrong. I knew something was up. I knew there was more to the story. I knew that I couldn't, it was just something spoke to me. It was like, no, you're making the wrong choice. You got to go the other way, And so I made the decision to fully commit and fully invest into getting in there and doing something, and because I think it kind of scared me a bit. I think I got a little scared, like maybe I was not as, well off as I thought I was, and it kind of freaked me out. And so, and then the rest is kind of history. I mean, I kind of I've since come in and become
re-engaged
and as active as I can. Because I still do have to work. You son of bitches.
We're all working too.
I know you are. And I'm not trying to say that you guys don't, because I know it's
what you're doing. I'm sitting at a desk job, and I can kind of do this thing on almost like on autopilot with it. Yeah. So I can stay pretty engaged in it.
I'm a little different, I guess. If I'm running around with a truck and tools and ladders, I'm climbing out, working on
dirty hands, and
and I got an employee usually always up my butt, like literally up, sitting right next to me that I have to.
Well, and I have this thing about participating, but I don't care how much, just do. And the other thing is it's just. to me, it's upper than this level of connection we have with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that's a whole lot of what that thing with the Holy Rollers is what y'all were doing. This whole thing
Right.
and that's why I think where you see the power happening in Spiritual Undergrounds, is we're all like connecting with each other and we're engaging in each other's lives and getting to know each other. And that thing is just allowing us to do that. Because if we're just seeing each other on Tuesday nights for an hour, and and maybe you reach out to a couple people,
Right.
That's and that keeps a lot of people sober for a long time. Well, we got a big bunch that is like solidly woven together, right? And we know each other, we know our kids' names, and we know our wives' names and different things like that. And we know each other. It's just deepened that connection. It's one thing that whole most of the time when I say a prayer, it usually includes something about deepening my connection with my higher power and deepening my connection with my community, my brothers, my whoever it is, if it's my girlfriend.
Right.
I'm praying to deepen that connection with one another too. This way and this way,
Right.
Vertical and horizontal.
Right. Exactly. No. Yeah, for sure. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
I like everything you just said right there. So yeah. So I'm
Chips are back in the middle of the table.
Yeah, they're all in, and I am woke. I'm no longer on the sidelines. I'm no longer on the back burner, and it's been good too because the wife and I have had we've been in marriage therapy and all that, so that's been a new thing this past year, and so there were some definite I think casualties from my back burner of my program and that can happen. But thank God, the program works. It still works. And thank God that, I didn't have to go back out, that I was able to get saved by the safety net again. And that would not be, this is not the first time,
I do that thing with the compass. I have an internal compass, and I always got to do course corrections. And you did the course correction before it got too far off a path. And that's what this is about too, is getting that happening.
And I'm grateful as hell for it, because I've grown to love you guys and respect the hell out of you, and just
it's a blast.
Amazed and blown away by the maturity and the intelligence that a lot of you guys have. It's just crazy. It's mesmerizing. So I'm gonna stick around long enough just to see what the hell you guys turn out to be into. Honestly, I'm so intrigued by this whole group.
We got a lot of good things going on for sure, man.
Yeah.
Hey, man, we are hitting that 2-hour mark, and that's kind of like my little bit of my little threshold that I'm trying to keep the listeners from having to listen to too much of that at a time. So appreciate you being on here. So once again, a bunch of good stuff. You got a lot to offer, and you've got a lot of time there, and it just don't happen. You don't get to tell these kind of stories in a half hour, 45 minutes. It takes longer than that. Plus, it's kind of a conversation thing, and I like this whole long form thing we get. I'm a podcast fan, period. There's one guy I listen to. You listen to the Joe Rogan podcast, it comes up. Sometimes it's approaching 4 hours, 3.5 hour podcast.
Oh wow!
And I can sit and listen to that and be engaged, hearing a couple guys talk and shoot the shit. So I appreciate you coming and doing this. I'm certainly, man, I'm just juiced up that you've re-engaged and coming back in. That's the third thing. I just love seeing people coming and getting this stuff that we got going on and having that having that juice start flowing through everybody's lives a little more and increasing this web we have of protection around us in this community. So. For you guys that are listening, we'll do the same thing. I'll just tell you that if you go to spiritualunderground.org, you can get the show notes. You can see there's a link there to contact me if you have any feedback. I'm more than happy to hear feedback. I don't get enough of that. Listenership is jacking up big time, so I like that. We've tomorrow make it 5 weeks since we released the first podcast out, and we've had someplace in the neighborhood. Well, we'll cross over 600 listens in just a minute. I think I looked at it a little bit ago, and it's like 595.
Wow.
So I think that's pretty good.
It was just 500 last week. So we've had 100
so it's
people
another 100. It's increasing about 100 every week, or more than 100 every week listens.
Cool.
So
that's super cool.
That's super cool, and you can go out there and see the show notes. We got a couple. We've got one round table that's going to come out this Sunday. Would expect that this story tonight will come out the following Sunday. I'm I've committed to having new content out on a weekly basis, and so far that's been happening. So Stay tuned. Keep watching. We are on the Facebook. I think I've started advertising on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and then of course word of mouth. And people are listening, so I'm gonna keep on doing it. I'm having a blast doing it. First, I get a little email in the morning that says if you're not enjoying your recovery, it's your own damn fault. Yeah. And I'm having a blast in recovery.
Oh yeah.
Thanks, Branden, man. Love you to death.
Love you too.
And we'll sign off with a peace out.
Peace out. Boop. Take a look at what that's done for